Good morning or afternoon. So today I'm going to talk about a new product that I want to launch for an organization called Brazil Magazine. I'm going to structure this conversation to seven main topics. The first one is the mission of the magazine. Second, we have how it connects to the rest of our products for a full browser experience. Then the editorial calendar, human resources required, financial resources required, the pilot edition, and finally the benchmarking magazines. So for the mission of the Brazil Magazine will be to engage the public to act by showcasing innovative initiatives led by Brazilians abroad. So currently, the scenario of Brazilian media right now is very dark and it's just it shows media that is eye catching, but only those that like the bad information that comes to the public, so they can actually read the articles, but it doesn't add any value to the people who read it. So this is why we think Brazil Magazine is important. There's also a very big monopoly in Brazilian media by Globo, Veja, Capital Letter, which is actually a Brazilian newspaper, and they're bombarded with this dark and sinister, but also relevant information. So the magazine will try to provide content to our audience that calls them to action. The second topic is for, as you all know, for Brasa, we have three main pillars. First one is perspective, which prepares the students in Brazil to go to the best university in the world. Second one is university, which develops those students in the universities to become the future leaders of Brazil. And then we have the third branch is alumni, which strives to engage those Brazilians who had that experience abroad or back in Brazil, so they can actually be in this connected network where they can still do amazing things together. Outside those three branches, we have the membership department, which strives to connect with our audience so they can actually use our products. And the Brasa magazine would be also outside the three main branches, but also interacting actively with those three main audiences, just in the same way the membership does. It's also very important to know that the Brasa magazine it will be crucial for expansion for the grad students and MBAs and students in MBAs, because it'll also be an amazing opportunity for those students to be engaging Brasa magazine as writers, because they will be a part of the content creation process and make them feel like Brasa also belongs to them. So now with the editorial calendar would be separated into six main phases. The first one would be developing the theme of the magazine. That would be every 3 months the magazine will be released with this one central theme that's going to be the focus of the magazine. And then the second main phase is the pitching process. We're going to find the writers and correspondents to come to our magazine, which we're going to talk about that later. Then we have the research period, which will be comprised of finding the quotes or sources that are going to be used in the articles those writers will be writing, because it's very important when you're writing informative journalism that you find at least three main sources. It's enlightening, it adds upon prior knowledge, and it's also fact-based. Then we have two main phases of editing. So the correspondents will be writing their own articles, and then doing those by the end of those two weeks, we'll be checking up on their progress and make sure that the language they're writing is in corresponds to the rest of the overall theme of the magazine. It also corresponds to the language the browser wants to portray. And the sixth main phase would be the publishing period, which would be when we're gonna finalize the overall layout, get all the photos ready, and release the magazine to the public. The next step of this talk is the human resources. So the first edition only need 3 people. First of all, will be the chief and editor, which would be me. So I'll be using both the roles of chief communications officer and chief editor in chief. On the mid to long term, those two positions should be separated. But now we can, since it won't be too hectic or chaotic, or be a smaller magazine, I can still be in the two positions at the same time. And my main role in the magazine will be to oversee the overall workflow of the magazine, make sure that everything is on track and that it corresponds to the work of the other directors in Brasa. The second person will be the managing editor, and that person will be in charge of providing the journalistic insight to the writers. So he needs to have some experience in journalism and enforcing the deadlines of the editorial calendar. And finally, we have the creative manager, and this person will be in charge of developing the theme of the magazine together with the other editors, but also the artistic side of it. So all the way from the layout to the photo shoots to the cover, it will all be on his department. So these would be the 3 people initially that will be always a part of the Brasa magazine. And then we have the writers and correspondents, and they will be selected for every single magazine, every single edition. You'll have different writers and correspondents. They can come back, but it's not necessary. Like they won't be employees of the magazine. They're just going to be just for that specific edition. And it was selected through a pitch process in which we will release to the public what is the main theme for the magazine, and if they're interested in the magazine, they would come up with ideas for articles or people they want to interview or even videos that they want to make, and we will use that and we will judge those ideas to see if they would correlate well to the rest of our magazine, and then select the best 10 to 12 people so they could be a part of our magazine for the next 3 months. Important to know that even though we only want about 7 of those articles, we want to have at least 10 to 12, so we have a margin of error, so that in case some of the students they drop out, we still have enough content to release a magazine. And now, financial resources. For now, we won't be needing anything except the TI things, like a website or maybe email, so it wouldn't be more than, I don't know, about $200 tops. Assuming we're going to stay inside digital media, which I recommend, but we can talk about that later. And so now on the pilot edition, which the first edition will be released in September, but will only be written by 3 people, like the editor-in-chief, the managing editor, and the creative manager, and it will only serve as reference so that when we're actually hiring more people and bringing in those writers and correspondents for our pitch process, that they will know what is the overall where we want the magazine to go to, so that they know what they're getting themselves into. And it is also important, this first writing part, because when you're leading a magazine, it's important for you to know how the writers will go through the entire editorial calendar and what are the hard parts of the job, what are the easy parts of the job. So when we're managing the magazine ourselves, it's much easier for us to know what is going on to our workers' minds. So it has those two main reasons for a first pilot edition. And then finally, we have the magazines that would be served as benchmarking. The first one is These 50 States, which is run by Yale students, which is a student-run organization, and they're important as benchmarking because they're very lean. They only have 7 people in their staff. They've been running consecutively for 7 years already. 3 years, and they don't have a lot of people in their staff, but they still manage to have a very large magazine, and that is because of their pitch process, which is where we research our idea for a pitch and use it as reference. The second one is Whole Think Tank, which even though they're not a magazine, they're only purely digital and focus more on blogs and articles independently, but their main maxima is think, solve, and share, which means that not only do they strive to inform, but also to engage the public to act, which is something that us in Browser Magazine also want to do. And finally, we have Yale Daily News, which is the most prestigious student-run newspaper in the world, and they're referenced for their professionalism and how efficient they are in their journalism. And yeah, so that is Browser Magazine. So now I'm going to open up for questions. Thank you very much.